But if not, at least you should understand that work is your way of contributing to the world, to making a bit of a difference, even when you're very young, even if you're delivering newspapers. You are giving some kind of benefit to the people who receive your newspapers. And getting paid. And it feels good. And I have to tell you, most of successful entrepreneurs that we studied at some stage had done this kind of paid work early in childhood. It was found to be a good thing for your children to work, not sending them up the chimneys, but actually doing little jobs around the place. Even instead of paying pocket money, we tried to pay our children for doing particular little projects in the home. Money makes work valuable in your eyes. But also, you do have to learn that if you're living with other people, you have in some ways to respect to their needs as well as yours. You have to develop a bit of empathy to understand what they might want, because if you're going to live with them, in order to get what you want, you have to give them a little of what they want. You have to give in order to get. And that doesn't have to be a formal negotiation. It must be a little bit of appreciation of other people's needs. Then they might appreciate your needs. Compromise, you may call it, but somehow in Britain that's a bad word. I would argue that nothing works unless there is some form of compromise. A form of what I call Chinese contract. When I was out there in the Far East selling oil to the locals, one of my jobs as a local manager in the bottom of Malaya was to sign a contract with the Chinese agents about the prices and the discounts and that they would pay and we would give them for the oil. And every 3 years we had to sign these new contracts. And it was my job to negotiate the contracts within certain boundaries which the company set down for me. So I would go around and I'd negotiate with these clever Chinese guys. And we would agree what the discounts were, what the credit terms were, etc., etc. And we'd shake hands and we'd drink 2 or 3 glasses of brandy. And everything was fine. And then I'd delve into my briefcase and pull out this company contract and I'd say, here's the company contract. We just have to sign this here. I'd fill in the figures that we'd agreed. And the chap would say, the Chinese would say always, what's this? I would say, it's the contract. It's just what we've agreed. He said, do you want me to sign this? And I would say, yes, I would. And he'd say, In that case, it means that obviously you've got more than I've got. Otherwise, you wouldn't need for me to sign it. The only kind of contract I want to have is one in which we both get what we want. And if we both get what we want, then surely we don't need to sign it. And well, I said, well, I'm sorry, it's a stupid ritual the company has. And would you mind, and have another glass of brandy and it's fine. But it stuck with me that the real contracts that work are the ones where you don't need to sign anything because both people are getting something out of it. Now, I think the successful families are the ones where you have lots of Chinese contracts going on and everybody understands that you have to give in order to get. So, this is the first family. We had 3 families. And this is what I would call the traditional family in the sense that Dad went out to work. He was the main money earner, which didn't mean that the wife didn't work, but he was the main money earner and they had children. And they learnt in the home about caring for other people, about sharing them, and about work. And you'll see pictures trying to capture that up there. But then, as you know, families take all shapes and sizes. So the second one was a single-parent family living in North London. And again, you will see up there how they learned to work and share and care for each other upstairs. And lastly, this is a country family, 2 kids. But in this case, she was the person who brought the money in and went outside to work, and he looked after the kids. In other words, all sorts of families can exist that produce the kind of learning that I think you can't get at schools, but that were absolutely vital. The only problem is, families may be the real school for life, but not all families are very good schools. And I do think it's terribly important that we realize that if we want our children to be good at relationships as they grow older, they've got to start by learning about relationships just with the family before they embark on a wider area of life. Well, unfortunately, not too many families understand how important those early years are. So, upstairs, you'll understand exactly why families are so important in teaching people about relationships. But come the age of 30, most people will begin to think of settling down. As you know, average age of marriage is going up into 27 for women and 31 for men. Now, it's all moved on a decade, actually. And then you enter what I call the age of responsibility, which probably lasts for 30 years, maybe more, maybe less. When you have this terrible combination of having to drive money, but also there are usually children. Now, this is another of the good things that happened as a sting in the tail. I mean, I think it's wonderful that women are now universally understood to be as good as men at any job in the world, and often better. And I think that's fantastic, and we know already that there are more women going to university than men, and women are getting better grades than men at universities, and all that's marvelous. Except, of course, quite naturally, women therefore want to do the same kind of jobs that men want to do, and to have the same kind of careers that men want to have. So the question arises, who is actually looking after this family that's a school for life? Having outsourced your children to the school to learn all the sorts of things they don't need to learn because you can get it all off your little smartphone, you're now going to outsource them at home. So that somebody else that you don't know very well is going to teach them all these skills of relationships and how to care for each other and so on. Or is one of you going to stop at home and do some of that? Or are both of you going to do that one way or another, sharing away? It's a big issue, and I have no answer for it, except to say, for goodness sake, please, as you enter the age of responsibility, think about it. Because think about it. You've just got married at 27 or 28, and there are two of you, dinkies, dual income, no kids yet. Wonderful life, both of you with good jobs, champagne flowing at weekends, skiing for the weekend somewhere else, swimming in the sea in Portugal, whatever. It's all wonderful, isn't it? And even work is exciting. And then suddenly, she's pregnant, and you're in your 30s, and work has got very serious, because suddenly you are in charge of a team or a project, and you've got to deliver. And you're there all day and often all night. And you go home, and what do you find at home? A partner who's also been, all day and all night. And there's a baby or two babies. And so it's a very big issue. And this is where the real negotiation has to happen. And you have to have a Chinese contract. And believe me, it has to be a contract, even if it's Chinese, and you have to make sure that both of you are understanding what the sides of that contract are. And it's very difficult, and I was guilty of that as anybody. At that stage in my 30s, I was helping to build the London Business School. And it was very exciting, as any start-up operation is, but this was particularly exciting. It was one of the first two business schools, proper business schools in Europe. And we were going to change the country. We were going to save the world. We were incredibly important. At the average age of the first clutch of faculty there were 10 of us, and the average age was 33. And we were going to change the world. Well, all I can tell you is that it was A, fascinating, and B, very time-consuming. And so I would get home at about 8 o'clock, and luckily the kids were in bed. So I patted them on the head. They were asleep, so they couldn't tell them a story even. And I'd leave at 7 o'clock in the morning before the kids were up. Poor things, so they never saw me. In fact, my daughter told me, I hope half teasingly when she was in her teens, that until she was 10, she thought I was the man who came to lunch on Sunday. Because I really wasn't actually effectively in the house during the week. But the penny really dropped when, after about 4 years of this, my wonderful wife, my in-house counselor, said, how's this school of yours doing? And I said, well, considering it's the first business school, or one of the first two in Britain, and we've got to get everybody used to it, it's not doing at all badly. In fact, I would say it's doing rather well. Says I, slightly fugly. And she said, I'm so glad for you, she said. I just thought, you ought to know, you've become the most boring man I've ever met. And it does happen. People who get so immersed in their job that they really can only talk about their job. It's a phenomenon when we go to business dinners and you know, the sexes are properly segregated. So my wife is sitting between two very powerful business tycoons, and I'm sitting between two rather glamorous ladies. And in the car going back we say, what sort of evening did you have? And I say, well, actually, fascinating people. How was yours? And she said, it was extraordinary. She said, they talked across me. They only talked about their own lives. Not one of them asked me a question about my life at all. They were incredibly boring. I said, they couldn't be boring. He's the captain of this or the head of this, you know. But if you are immersed in one life, that's all you can talk about. It's not much fun for anybody else around you. And it's probably not much fun for your partner. Well, when she said that, obviously something had to happen. You need a wake-up call occasionally. And then maybe you have to renegotiate the contract at certain stages as the children move through progressive stages of life. I'm going to show you a couple of photographs. This is Elizabeth's self-portrait in what was then her kitchen. Now, this is her device. She maintains that when she's hearing all my waffle about identity and how we have different roles in life and appear in different guises, she said, well, of course, she said, and I'm going to demonstrate this to you photographically. I'm going to ask people, and I'll start with myself, to dress up in their different roles, or act out their different roles, and to position themselves in the same space. And I will take a series of photographs of them, and then I put them all together. So all the three women in this place is Elizabeth. Elizabeth doing different things. So in the front, there's Elizabeth as the photographer. In the middle is Elizabeth as the house mother at the stove. And at the back, there's Elizabeth as my agent and business manager. You can see how important I am in her life. because what happens when you do this, and you do it quite unconsciously, if somebody says to you, act out the three roles in your life, the role that's most important to you, you instinctively put closest to the camera. And that means that when the picture comes out, it's the largest image. So it's quite clear from this what's most important to Elizabeth. Photography. Followed by house mother. Followed, as I said, in a very small way by me.